I don't know what came over me that night. Maybe it was the weight of the unanswered questions piling up day after day. Maybe it was the strange stories, or the boy's warning, or what I had seen moving out there in the dark. Maybe it was that creeping curiosity, the kind that whispers in the back of your mind, telling you that some doors were meant to be open. Whatever the reason, I found myself slipping on my coat and quietly easing out the back door. The night air was cold against my face, and the only sound I could hear was the faint rush of the creek beyond the garden. I didn't bring much with me, just my phone, which I tucked into my jacket pocket, and a growing sense that I might be making a huge mistake. I stayed low as I moved across the yard, careful not to make any noise. The moon was high enough to cast a soft glow over everything, and I could just make the outline out of the stone doorway in the distance. I crept behind a bush a few feet from it and crouched low, peering out towards the opening. For a while, there was nothing, just the rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. My legs started to cramp, and I was just about to give up and go back inside when something shifted near the stones. Something was moving. It wasn't a rabbit. I could tell that much right away. Whatever it was upright, walking on two legs. Small, but not in the way a child is small. Compact, quick. Just as I leaned forward for a better look, it slipped out of sight behind the wall. That was when my curiosity completely overrode my sense. I moved slowly towards the doorway. The grass felt wet under my shoes, and every step seemed impossibly loud. My heart was pounding in my ears. When I reached the stones, I paused. From up close, the structure looked even older. The rocks were worn and rough, moss clinging to the crevices. It felt like I was standing in front of something ancient. I leaned forward and looked through. Nothing, just forest. Trees, twisted and dark, standing like quiet sentinels on the other side. It didn't feel inviting. In fact, every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around and go back inside. But I didn't. I stepped through the doorway. The forest was immediately different. The air was colder, heavier. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, the narrow beam barely cutting through the shadows. The trees were packed tight, their limbs reaching out in every direction. Every sound was amplified, the creak of wood, the crunch of dead leaves under my boots. And then I felt it. A sudden, sharp pain in my leg, so strong and unexpected it knocked me to the ground. I let out a gasp, clutching at my thigh. When I looked down, I froze. A wooden shaft was sticking out of my leg. My fingers wrapped around it and I pulled, gritting my teeth through the pain. When it came free, I realized it was a spear. Not a full-sized one, but small, no longer than my forearm. The tip had been carved from wood and sharpened into a fine point. Someone had made this. It wasn't a branch or some natural accident. This had been crafted. I tried to stand, but the pain forced me back to the ground. My leg wasn't broken, but it was bleeding and throbbing. I knew I had to get out of the forest. I started crawling back towards the doorway, dragging myself through the underbrush. Then I stopped. I heard it, whispering. Soft, unintelligible voices. It wasn't one person. It was many, all speaking at once in a language I didn't understand. The whispers seemed to be coming from every direction, like the forest itself was speaking. Then I saw them. Eyes, dozen of them, glowing faintly in the dark. All of them staring at me. Panic set in. I forced myself to my feet, hobbling as fast as I could towards the stone wall. Then, another sharp pain, this time in my other thigh. I screamed, falling again. Another spear, just like the first. I pulled it out with shaking hands, the pain blinding. And then I saw him. A man, or at least something like a man. He stood maybe 2.5 feet tall. His skin was pale but weathered like old bark. His beard was long and black, reaching almost to his waist. His ears and nose were slightly too large, his features exaggerated like something out of a storybook. In his hand, he held another spear, the tip gleaming in the faint moonlight. He stepped forward and we locked eyes. There was something intelligent behind his gaze, not animal instinct, not wild aggression, something ancient, calculating. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know if he was going to kill me or drag me deeper into the woods, or worse. I reached into my jacket, fumbling around for anything I could use to protect myself. And that's when I felt it, the toy horse, the one the son had left behind. I pulled it out without thinking. I looked at it, realizing the only thing I had to defend myself was this toy. It was in that moment that I knew I was doomed. I looked back at the man, ready to plead for my life. And that's when I saw it. The man's expression changed. He lowered his spear and took a few cautious steps towards me. He reached out, his small, gnarled fingers wrapping around the wooden toy. He turned it over in his hands, expecting the craftsmanship, the details. Then he looked at me again. His eyes were no longer threatening, but curious. He said something, words I couldn't understand, but they didn't sound angry. They sounded appreciative, maybe. And then, just like that, he stepped back into the darkness. The whispers faded, the glowing eyes vanished, and I was alone again. I lay there stunned, not entirely sure if what just happened was real. Then I heard a voice calling my name. Not a whisper this time, a shout. Familiar. It was Dad. I turned towards the doorway. He was standing there, holding a flashlight, his face pale. He ran to me, grabbing my arm and hoisting me up. We didn't speak, he just helped me limp back to the house. When we got inside, I collapsed into one of the chairs at the kitchen table. My pants were soaked with blood. Mom rushed in with the first aid kit, and together they patched me up, cleaning the wounds, wrapping them tightly. I kept apologizing, over and over again. Mom scolded me. She said she'd warned me not to go into the forest. Her face was tight with anger, but it didn't last. A moment later, she softened. She said she was just glad I made it out alive. Dad sat beside me and asked a simple question. Why did it let you go? I told him how I had offered the toy to the bearded man in the woods. They stared at me. Then they nodded. Mom said I was lucky. Lucky that I had it. Lucky that I thought to offer it. She said the Hulu folk accept gifts, but they don't tolerate trespassers. I never went back into that forest. Not once. Not for the rest of my stay. When I returned to the States, I never told anyone what happened. Not my classmates, not my friends, not even my family. But I think about it often. Sometimes when I'm walking through a park or hiking in the woods, I find myself glancing between the trees, wondering if something might be watching. I often try convincing myself that what I experienced wasn't real. Maybe it was the cold, the fear, my imagination. But deep down, I know the truth. There are places in this world we're not meant to step into, places that belong to something else. And when we do, we're lucky if all we lose is a drop of blood. I've never forgotten that forest, or the man with the spear, or the way he looked at that little wooden horse. It wasn't just a toy, it was respect. And out there, that's everything.